Kay, who's with Houston Leadership for Tomorrow, will talk about the nonprofit.
Thank you. We also had a great group. It was a large group and a very diverse group in terms of the types of experiences and services that are provided. So thanks to each one of you for great input in that conversation. We focused our key strategy or our priority strategy on providing services to these identified almost completers. So obviously we would have to work with the business community, with the colleges and universities to understand who those folks are. But one of the things that came out of the conversation is that many of these folks have challenges beyond financial challenges, and those challenges vary from day to day. And so that there needs to be, and what this group can do is focus on providing mentoring or some sort of case support to these almost completers to help them fill in the gaps and provide the support that they need on a day-to-day basis. The other key thing is really providing information to them, and we've heard that from the other groups also, so that if we have mentors, if we have folks who work with these almost completers, that they can point their target folks to the information that they need to actually achieve their goals. Obviously, communication strategy, that's another consistent message needs to be developed. And then we also talked about, in terms of really focusing on, there was some tension in our group between the short-term bias for action and the longer-term, the real economic value of this whole exercise and developing a culture of education here in the city of Houston. But in the meantime, one way to start to merge that is to look at our two key industry sectors, where a lot of these folks who are almost completers are already working, and so that would be obviously energy, and then we had one representative from Memorial Herman that indicated that so many folks are working already in the medical sector. To really figure out who they are and then focus our efforts on those so that we can actually get some short-term wins that would then give us the momentum to move on to the longer-term objective that we're seeking to achieve. I think that's about it.
Our final report out is from John Prophet. If you haven't met him, he is now with KUHF, and I was bragging to Lee earlier, a lot of people don't realize that Houston had the very first public broadcasting station in the country, yes, right here in Houston, Texas. So John, you're in the public relations group, and have you report out.
Thanks, Catherine. Actually, Houston PBS Channel 8 was the very first public television station in 1953. But KUHF actually came on the air a few years earlier than that, but public radio actually goes back to the 1920s. Our colleagues at the University of Wisconsin in Madison were the very first public radio station to come on here. So a lot of history there, but Houston was first with public television, which we're very, very proud of that. The public relations group met and was trying to drill down to the question of how we should go about approaching talking about and messaging the question of the dividend competition to the community. And we've really realized right from the very beginning that there are two different audiences, broadly speaking, we're talking to. The most important audience absolutely is the audience of the near completers, the almost completers. And that's one very specific message that's given to these folks. The other audience, of course, are the facilitators, the universities, the two-year colleges, and the other community and family support organizations that will help make it possible for the near completers to complete their degrees. So it's really quite a bit of difference in the way these messages should be crafted. And the very first priority of the public relations group will be to sit down and start drafting these messages. Get the very first wording that we can perhaps share with the larger group to see if we're on the right track and getting the as simple and direct message as possible to both groups so that this is understood and can get across. Once we have the messages ironed out, drilling down further to developing an actual multimedia approach to it is going to be very important too, especially with the near completers themselves. We're talking about traditional approach of public service announcements, PSAs, as has been used traditionally over many years, probably pretty much useless. Speaking frankly, but modern social media, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth, perhaps very useful to do something like this. If we approach trying to reach the people of this demographic with the message in the words of people who've actually faced these issues, the challenge of being, for instance, a single mother who has perhaps 10 hours remaining to acquire her degree, who actually did face these challenges and got help from this agency or this circumstance and managed to do the completion 6 months, a year later than expected. You can tell her story in a recorded video posted on YouTube or Facebook, and assembly a group of messages like this on a Facebook site devoted to metallic dividend to tell the story. And these stories, if done correctly, can become part of a viral message to tell the story to other folks, so that it really is possible. It's not that we're trying to, as the big know-it-all experts, trying to tell folks that this is what you should do, you need to do, this is good for Houston, this is what you need to do, so do it. We'd rather have their peers tell them, well, actually, it's not hopeless, it's possible, I did it, we think you can too, and here are some contacts and ideas that might make it possible. So, 2 messages. The message for the near completers, and the message then for the facilitators is a different one, which encompasses the benefits to the community, and maybe some of the bullet points that Lee brought out in his keynote message, very important to this, the economic benefits to the community, the idea that 36,000 additional graduates by 2013 can mean $4 billion to the Houston economy. Boy, that's a pretty stark message, and a very positive one, simplified and part of a campaign to be brought to the facilitators. We need to, in fairly short order, perhaps for our next meeting of this group, October 13th, to also bring in the marketing and communications folks from the other universities and community colleges in the area. We have a few experts at this meeting today who will be bringing more. Some of the communications and marketing folks from U of H, from Lone Star, from Kingwood, HCC, Vice, and so forth. Very good involvement. So that would be an immediate action in terms of sitting down in a couple of weeks and starting to draft these messages, and then share them with the group and see what kind of reaction we get. At that point, once we have the messages drafted, we can sit down and look at the concept of setting up a Facebook page and looking at other specific methods of getting the word out to the community. And there will be news releases to go to community newspapers and to the Houston Chronicle and so forth. But I think that certainly in terms of reaching the target audience of the near completers, social media probably will be the first and foremost method of doing that. And one thing coming up in January was that Patricia Torres-Bird brought to my attention, which is a terrific idea. The National Ad Council will have a PSA campaign in January that we probably piggyback on in terms of their educational pro bono ad campaign that may be able to help us out and give us some support for what we want to do in terms of giving some national prominence to this. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, you all have been super, super busy. Very high productivity level in that hour plus in terms of your breakout sessions. And I think all of you identified some dates. We'll talk about that as well. Before I go any further and wrap up, I have a few people I want to thank. the Kresge Foundation, working with CEOs for Cities, issued a challenge grant to each of those cities or regions participating in the Talent Dividend. $10,000, and we were very lucky to have El Paso Corporation and the Duncan Foundation step up and match that challenge grant so that we can help pay for convening, meeting, materials, etc. So thank you, El Paso and the Duncan Foundation. And I know each of your breakout groups, each of your working subcommittees will be meeting sometime in the next month or two. But we also have already planned a reunion of sorts for all of us to get back together in February. And that will be February 10th. It will be at the George R. Brown, so if you could mark that on your calendars today. We are going to be having a meeting in the morning to talk about our indicator report. And that is the work that is ongoing this year, and we will report out next year. It covers pre-K, right through workforce, readiness, training. And we'd love for you to join us in the morning for the symposium, and that very same afternoon in the same place, the George R. Brown, we will have the reunion, the workshop of this group working particularly on Talent Dividend. So please join us for that. We will send reminders to each of you. Hopefully you all passed out, your facilitators passed out. You want to make sure we have your right email address and contact information. And finally, I want to thank several people. I want to thank Lee and Fran for coming from Chicago and really Cleveland for the session today to really give us a fabulous broad brush picture of what's going on across the country. Remind us that there are lots of cities that are working on this issue. I want to thank the center staff, particularly Donna Robisky, Sandra Wegman, Heidi Beal, really all of the staff. We are, I heard this from Mark McHale, that we are lean and mean, and we are lean and mean. And most importantly, of course, I want to thank each of you for making time today to be here at this session. I want to leave you with two thoughts, one of which is a favorite of the founder of the Center for Houston's Future, and that is the future is not a fate, it's a choice. And the other one is that a different world cannot be built by indifferent people. The future is in our hands, and you all can make a difference, and you can make a different world for a lot of people around this region. And we thank you. As they say in the Star Wars movies, go forth and prosper, or is that a Star Trek?